When air raid sirens blare across an entire nation in the deep hours before dawn, what is truly being signaled? Not merely about the day ahead, but about the future unfolding in this war. Is it a warning of immediate danger, or a harbinger of a changed battlefield, where the rules and rhythms of conflict are being rewritten in real time? Last night, Ukraine's entire territory was wrenched awake by a sweeping countrywide alert. Every region, from the bustling capital of Kiev to the farmlands of the West, from the industrial Donbass to the Black Sea coast, found itself under the same shadow. It was more than the usual warning. It marked a dramatic heightening of the stakes, a coordinated display of force that resonated far beyond the sound of sirens. Military sources confirmed the deployment of some of the world's most advanced weaponry. Hypersonic missiles, capable of traveling at several times the speed of sound, were launched from supersonic aircraft, streaking through the darkness at blinding velocity. These are not the routine barrages that have become grimly familiar. Instead, they represent a calculated escalation in both technology and intent, a message as much as a military maneuver. The results were immediate, palpable, and far-reaching. Explosions shattered the early morning stillness in multiple regions. Cascading power outages left entire neighborhoods submerged in darkness, their only illumination the brief, ghostly glow of distant detonations. Key infrastructure, power plants, energy hubs, vital logistics centers, were hit, leaving not only physical destruction, but also a deepening sense of uncertainty that rippled across the nation. But this is no longer simply about missiles or the clash of armies on muddy fields. The tension now crackles far beyond the front lines, threatening Ukraine's already fragile energy systems and the daily existence of millions. Every blackout, every strike, is a blunt reminder that this contest is fought as much in control rooms and power grids as it is in trenches and tank columns. If we misinterpret these signals, if our focus remains fixed solely on territory gained or lost, or on the visible movement of troops, we risk overlooking how the very nature of the conflict has shifted. That mistake could blind us to the war's evolving trajectory, its mounting humanitarian toll, and its reverberations for Europe and the wider world. So, what is truly at stake when the lights vanish and the sirens howl? In this tangled struggle for power, both electrical and political, how is the face of the conflict being transformed before our eyes? The overnight attacks have forced many to reconsider what victory and survival mean in a war where infrastructure is as much a target as soldiers. As Ukraine scrambles to restore power and morale, the world is watching, holding its breath, to see how both sides adapt to this new battlefield, one where the invisible lines of the energy grid are as heavily contested as any patch of ground. Last night's alarms were not mere background noise. They were the soundtrack to a dramatic shift in Ukraine's war. Air raid sirens screamed across every oblast as waves of hypersonic and cruise missiles, paired with hundreds of drones, tore into Ukrainian territory. The scale was staggering. This marked one of the most massive synchronized strikes in recent memory, reminiscent of the darkest days of World War II, when cities trembled under nightly bombardments. Yet it is not just the size of the attack that sets it apart. This time, the missiles zeroed in on the beating heart of Ukraine's infrastructure. They targeted core energy facilities, massive power plants that light up entire cities, major airfields crucial for military logistics, and vital transit arteries that keep the economy moving. No longer content with disrupting substations, the strikes aimed directly at the nodes that power cities, run trains, and supply hospitals. The consequences landed fast and hard. Entire regions were plunged into darkness. Key power stations, some decades old, others recently modernized, took visible hits. Civilian systems, from railways to metros, were knocked offline. For the millions of people who depend on these services, the impact was immediate and personal. In the city of Kharkiv, for example, residents reported losing power for hours, with hospital staff working by flashlight and families huddling together for warmth. This was a blow not only to Ukraine's military logistics, but to the everyday rhythms of life. Imagine a mother in Lviv, unable to warm her child's milk because the stove is dead. Or a commuter in Dnipro, stranded on a dark platform as trains grind to a halt. These stories, repeated thousands of times over, reveal the true depth of the crisis. On the front lines, the intensity only grew. In the Pokrovsk and Mirnograd sectors, critical industrial and transport hubs, brutal clashes erupted. Russian troops pushed forward, testing Ukraine's defenses, while Ukrainian forces mounted fierce counterattacks. The struggle for control over these areas has never been more pivotal. In World War II, battles for rail junctions and factories often tipped the balance of entire campaigns. History now repeats itself, with modern weapons and new stakes. What truly sets this escalation apart is its focus and intent. The strikes were concentrated not on the limbs of the power grid, but on its very heart. The message is clear. This is a deliberate strategy to cripple Ukraine's energy system from the inside out, to undermine resilience rather than simply sow chaos. It echoes historical tactics, such as the Allied bombing of German industrial centers during World War II, intended to grind down the adversary's capacity to wage war. Ukraine's response has been urgent and relentless. Engineers raced to reroute electricity, emergency imports from European neighbors surged, and repair crews worked through the night to patch critical grids ahead of the coming cold. Every minute matters, as the country scrambles to close the gaps before another wave of missiles lands. In Kyiv, teams worked without pause, recalling the spirit of London's Blitz, when ordinary citizens became heroes in the face of relentless assault. The stakes could not be higher. If these strikes succeed, Ukraine faces a winter of energy scarcity, logistical gridlock, and a civilian population battered by hardship and uncertainty. This is not just about losing ground at the front, it is about risking the ability to keep resisting at all. A cold, dark winter could sap morale, strain resources, and force impossible choices between defending territory and sustaining basic survival. Yet behind the front lines and the blackouts, another battle is being waged, a contest of information and perception, as both sides seek to control the narrative and shape international response. In this arena, every image and every message is a weapon. Missiles may seize the headlines, but it is the silent, creeping threat of blackouts that could quietly decide a nation's fate. In Ukraine, every strike against a thermal or hydropower station does more than disrupt a military supply route. It plunges entire neighborhoods into darkness, halts factory lines, and abruptly rewrites the routines of millions. When the lights vanish, daily life stutters to a halt, sending shockwaves through both homes and heavy industry. Ukraine's power grid now endures relentless strain. Western support is arriving, not only as weapons, but also as teams of engineers and shipments of essential equipment, racing to patch up critical vulnerabilities before the next barrage of missile strikes. Each new wave of attacks uncovers fresh weak points, turning the entire energy network into a contested front as vital as any trench. In Odessa, for example, a single destroyed transformer left over 50,000 households without power for days, prompting a massive humanitarian response. For Russia, these assaults are not just about physical destruction. They are deliberate moves designed to test and erode Ukraine's capacity to sustain its army and its population under unending pressure. The strategy is devastating in its simplicity. Force Ukraine to stretch its focus and resources thin, undermining both its will to resist and its ability to function. This mirrors the siege tactics of the past, such as those used during the Battle of Leningrad, where deprivation became a weapon as lethal as any bomb. The consequences are immediate and severe. Military logistics buckle as power outages hit fuel depots, sever digital communications, and complicate the already dangerous task of resupplying troops in contested zones. A single blackout can stall a convoy, ground reconnaissance drones, or delay a life-saving medical evacuation. Risks that multiply each day, the grid remains fragile. In Mykolaiv, a blackout last month forced a field hospital to evacuate its patients, highlighting the vulnerability of even the most basic services. Urban combat grows ever more intense. Reports surface of encirclement threats and ceaseless artillery barrages near key transport and industrial hubs. Every maneuver, every shot, depends on supply chains stretched almost to breaking. In towns near the front, the lack of electricity or fuel turns daily existence into a battle for survival, blurring the line between civilian and soldier. In Avdiivka, residents have taken to collecting rainwater and using wood stoves, recalling the siege conditions seen in Sarajevo during the 1990s. Political stakes climb higher with every passing week. Ukraine's military leaders face scrutiny as failures or delays prompt questions in parliament and rumors of shakeups ripple through the general staff. The pressure is unyielding: lose ground or let the blackout drag on, and not only military fortunes, but state unity and global standing start to unravel. In December, a delay in restoring power led to heated debates in the Rada, Ukraine's parliament, echoing the political crises that have toppled governments in wartime before. In this war, the side that cannot keep the lights on or its troops supplied risks far more than lost territory. It stands to lose the trust of its people, the faith of its allies, and the very foundations of its sovereignty. Power grids and supply lines have become as critical and as fragile as any armored column or frontline trench. The memory of the Soviet collapse lingers when logistical failures hastened the end of an empire. While the battle rages in the shadows, Ukraine's leadership faces another test: keeping morale high and the country's institutions intact. The next moves will reveal whether resilience or exhaustion will shape the weeks to come. The experience of Finland during the Winter War, a nation that endured against overwhelming odds, serves as both inspiration and warning. When winter tightens its grip, energy becomes the most valuable weapon on the battlefield. Both Russia and Ukraine are preparing for a drawn-out contest of endurance. Russia rushes to modernize its forces and adapt its tactics, while Ukraine scrambles to reinforce defensive lines and begs for more support from the West before the full force of the cold sets in. The struggle is no longer only about weapons or territory. Both sides are bracing for the relentless test that winter imposes. In Kiev, diplomats urge their partners to unleash harsher sanctions, especially those aimed at Russian energy and advanced technology, in hopes of starving the Kremlin's war machine. Meanwhile, Western governments face excruciating decisions. How much can they risk in support of Ukraine without undermining their own economic or energy security? The stakes are immense. If Ukraine's power grid collapses under constant missile strikes, or if civilian morale breaks after weeks of freezing darkness, entire cities could become impossible to sustain. Such a collapse might force Ukraine to divert precious resources from the front, shifting the battle from defending borders to ensuring basic survival. The siege of Aleppo offers a stark reminder of how quickly urban life can unravel under sustained attack. On the ground, every blackout, every fuel shortage, and each broken supply line deepens the humanitarian crisis. Millions risk losing access to heat, electricity, and medical care, while international relief organizations struggle to keep up. Each new hardship chips away at the resolve of Ukraine's defenders and their allies abroad. The United Nations warns that prolonged blackouts could trigger a refugee wave, overwhelming neighboring countries and straining the fabric of European unity. The fighting near Pokrovsk shows how local gains can trigger regional consequences. Should Russian troops continue advancing there, they could carve out new routes for larger offensives or force Ukraine to pull back reserves from other threatened fronts. Now, every kilometer gained or lost carries weight far beyond the immediate map. During the Second World War, the capture of a single rail hub often decided the fate of entire divisions. Today, the stakes are just as high. This phase is no longer just about territory. It is a contest to protect infrastructure, to outlast pressure, military, economic, and political. One miscalculation could prolong the suffering, destabilize much of Europe, and set a perilous example for future wars, where energy and civilian lifelines are targeted by design. The lessons of Syria and Yemen, where attacks on water and power supplies became commonplace, now haunt the corridors of Brussels and Washington. As both sides dig in for winter, the world watches to see whose resolve will break first. The outcome may depend as much on endurance and adaptability as on any single battle. In this era of relentless conflict, survival is no longer defined by firepower alone. Adaptation is the new currency. How do you withstand the darkness when the grid fails and the old systems collapse? Across Ukraine, rapid repair teams speed toward shattered substations, braving shellfire to stitch the grid back together. Border-crossing energy flows are rerouted in real time, while agile logistics become as vital as tanks or drones. Suddenly, those who keep the lights on, energy workers, engineers, and local officials, stand shoulder to shoulder with soldiers, their work as urgent as any battle. In Zaporizhzhia, crews have restored power to entire districts in under 12 hours, a feat once thought impossible. When missiles plunge a city into darkness, the cavalry is not just military. International partners mobilize, delivering transformers, cables, and generators from thousands of kilometers away. These shipments are lifelines, no less critical than weapons, as besieged towns depend on them to survive the next assault. In the winter of 2023, Poland sent over 200 generators to Lviv, enabling hospitals to remain operational despite rolling blackouts. But another front is hidden: information security. Lapses in operational secrecy have already led to deadly attacks, teaching all sides that a single leaked message can unravel entire defenses. Now, safeguarding data is as fundamental as protecting convoys or fuel depots. The hacking of the Ukrainian railway's scheduling system last autumn forced emergency reroutes that delayed troop movements for hours, a sobering lesson in 21st century warfare. Strategic communication shapes the battlefield as much as artillery. Every speech, diplomatic signal, or calculated leak can sway morale and shift international support. In a war where every word is scrutinized, controlling the narrative becomes its own form of armor. The infamous Ghost of Kiev story, whether fact or fiction, served to rally a nation and confound adversaries. Ultimately, victory may depend less on capturing a few kilometers of territory and more on who can restore water, power, and hope while under fire. The side that adapts quickest, that can repair, reroute, and reassure in the chaos, will shape the outcome of this new kind of war. The Marshall Plan, which rebuilt Europe after World War II, stands as a testament to the power of resilience and reconstruction. The warning is stark. Nations and communities that fail to prepare for infrastructure warfare risk paralysis and lasting vulnerability. Those who learn and evolve, faster than the threats, keep not only the lights on, but the future within reach. The old rules are gone. Resilience and agility now decide survival. In Israel, years of investment in hardened infrastructure have enabled the country to weather rocket attacks with minimal disruption, offering lessons for Ukraine and its allies. But even as resilience grows, the cost of constant adaptation takes its toll. Beneath the surface, exhaustion and uncertainty are setting the stage for the next decisive phase. Sociologists warn of adaptation fatigue when populations become numb to crisis, risking a collapse of morale that can be as damaging as any physical blow. What defines real resilience? It is not just withstanding explosions. It is grasping the battle that rages beyond the immediate blasts. It is the quiet determination of a nurse who keeps a clinic open with a generator, or a mayor who organizes firewood deliveries when the gas lines freeze. Examples abound throughout history, from the Londoners of the Blitz to the citizens of Sarajevo, who built underground schools to maintain a sense of normalcy amidst chaos. Beneath the headlines and unsettling footage, modern warfare reveals its true face. It is not only about tanks and missiles, but about keeping electricity flowing, hospitals running, and food and fuel moving. It is the relentless targeting of power grids and bridges, a war of attrition over infrastructure, logistics, and morale. The front lines are everywhere, in the wires, in the roads, and in the minds of millions. In Ukraine, both sides have displayed extraordinary endurance. Their struggle is not only to fight, but to survive. Every strike on a power plant or railway tests the opponent's capacity to recover, adapt, and maintain hope. Victory is often measured not by territory seized, but by how quickly a city restores water, or whether a clinic stays open through darkness. The city of Kremenchuk, which restored full power in 48 hours after a devastating attack, became a symbol of defiance for the entire nation. Now, The battle is waged as fiercely in cyberspace and media as on ruined streets. Propaganda and misinformation travel faster than any drone, spreading confusion and fear. Staying alert, questioning each image, each claim, is its own kind of defense. Critical thinking becomes vital armor against manipulation and panic. The deepfake video of President Zelensky, circulated early in the war, demonstrated the new dangers posed by digital deception. This is not some distant drama. When gas prices spike or energy becomes scarce, the ripples of these conflicts reach us all. Decisions made far away can change daily life, at the pump, in the store, in the voting booth. Global stability depends on the resilience of systems most people rarely notice until they break. The European energy crisis of 2022, sparked by the war, forced governments to ration supplies and sparked protests from Paris to Prague. To navigate this world, do not just react to the noise. Look for the underlying patterns, the silent struggles over infrastructure, supply, and truth. Societies and individuals who see through the fog, who adapt and keep perspective, build the strongest resilience of all. As the war in Ukraine enters its next phase, the ultimate question is not just who controls the land, but who can light the darkness and endure until dawn.